All right, we're ready.
Hi, I'm Katie from wellnessmama.com, and I am so excited today to be here with Jayson and Mira Calton of Carlton Nutrition to talk about micronutrients and also some off-topic subjects like the many places they've traveled in the world, because you often hear about these traditional cultures all over the world and how they live and what they eat, but you guys have actually seen it, and I'm so excited to jump right in. Welcome, Jayson and Mira.
Thank you so much for having us, Katie.
Awesome. Well, I know that you often hear, and I hear all the time, that in modern times we're overfed but undernourished. And you guys are the experts in that realm because you specialize in micronutrients. You've even written the book on it, The Micronutrient Miracle, that's coming out this year, which is exciting. But can you delve into that? Like, what are the role of these micronutrients, and what are some of the deficiencies that we're seeing these days?
Absolutely. So first of all, micronutrients are not scary or frightening. You already know what they are. You probably just didn't use this long, scary word, micronutrients. So micronutrients are your vitamins A, C, D, things you already hear about, your minerals like calcium, magnesium, your essential fatty acids like that omega-3 that we all hear so much about, and your amino acids like you're taking in your protein powder. So it's just those four things put in one category. And what they do is they make it so your body can function. Basically, without them, you can do nothing. You can't breathe. Like everything from your breath to your skin tone to your bone structure,
cartilage, muscle.
Absolutely everything requires these in order for you to function, unlike the macronutrients.
Right. So food has two basic units to it. When we eat food, when we want to eat real food or rich food, what we're getting a caloric component. That's the carbs, the fats, and the proteins. And oftentimes that's what we talk about when we think about nutrition. We're always kind of engaged in whether we should have more carbs or less carbs or more fat or more protein, whatever it is. But food has a separate and equally important component called the micronutrients.
We happen to think it's a little more important.
And we happen to think it's more important because it's easy to get calories, isn't it? I mean, no matter what you do to food, you can slice it, dice it, microwave it, not that we recommend that, saute it, or all these other things, and you lose micronutrients. And that's what people sometimes don't understand. Those vitamins and minerals and those amino acids can be somehow depleted from the food in almost anything and destroyed oftentimes, but you're always left with the calorie. So yeah, we're big proponents of getting enough of the micronutrients through the food so that your body then can carry on all those functions that Mira said. And literally every system of your body needs these essential micronutrients to even allow for minimum basic health.
Yeah, so the overfed and the undernourished thing. Well, here's the issue. We're overfed because we're getting the excess in the macronutrients or the calories, but we're undernourished because most of the food that we're eating is what we call naked calories. It's actually food that has been stripped of its micronutrients from the second that it was planted and picked all the way through traveling to your house, all the way through preparation, all the way until after you eat it. So we keep stripping our food, so we're getting actually malnourished.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people say, well, malnourished, that always looks like the person who you see in those, third world countries who aren't getting enough food. But they've actually done studies, and those people are actually deficient in the same vitamins and minerals as the overweight or obese in our country who have tons of food, but they're also not getting the micronutrients. So although they look very different, they're actually the same exact disease.
Yeah, and I love that you guys delve into this because that's one of my biggest problems with all these diet plans that you see online and that people get pulled into is it's all about the calories, but you could eat 1,200 calories of just sugar and you're not getting any nutrients. You could eat 12,000 calories of just cheese and you might get some calcium, but you're missing out on. And I know from the latest research, the majority of Americans are only getting 15 basic foods most of the time. And it's things like potatoes and tomatoes and ketchup and wheat and soybeans and vegetable oils. And those are all pretty much micronutrient devoid. So what are some of the problems we're seeing and that we'll continue to see from micronutrient deficiencies?
Well, the interesting thing about micronutrients is, and we talk about this in the new book, The Micronutrient Miracle, that you can kind of compare it to an orchestra analogy. So if you have a flute and a harp and a clarinet and they play their notes together, that creates a very distinct sound. And it's like that with micronutrients. If you're deficient, let's say in calcium, magnesium, and vitamin D, you're going to get a very distinct effect, in this case, probably a health condition. So each health condition, it can relate back to a very specific grouping of deficiencies in your micronutrients. That's why it's so difficult to really define micronutrient deficiency. For, way back in the day, if you were deficient, and still today, if you're deficient in vitamin C, you're going to get scurvy. So that was that one note kind of micronutrient deficiency disease. If you're deficient in vitamin D, you get rickets. There were known micronutrient deficiency conditions that could be corrected by just becoming sufficient in that one micronutrient. But today, we're starting to see harmonized deficiencies. We're starting to see deficiencies in 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 different micronutrients. And those are creating completely different effects in the body. Poor sleep habits, bad skin and hair, stress, anxiety, panic attacks. These are what you're going to start to kind of see at the low-level deficiencies.
Well, it's actually an interesting point, because when you're just deficient for a short period of time, you get these very temporary things. So, for example, calcium and magnesium, if you're deficient, you get food cravings. So that's step one with it. But then, of course, if you stay deficient in those calcium, magnesium, then over a longer period of time, you get long latency diseases or lifestyle diseases. So those could be things like hypertension, or for me, it was osteoporosis. So, I didn't realize when I was younger, I got advanced osteoporosis at 30. And I had no idea what it was from, but looking back on it now, and when we first met, this is what we were doing. We were looking into my health concerns and trying to fix my body. And what we learned was that these small deficiencies over a long period of time had left me with the bones of an 85-year-old woman, when all I thought I was just getting tired and achy. And it really is these deficiencies over a long extended period of time cause major diseases. And we really just want people to prevent them so they don't have to reverse it like I did. And they're all very preventable.
It was really hugely eye-opening for us after we worked with Mira for over a 2-year period to actually reverse this incurable disease known as osteoporosis, according to the medical world. They think once the bone is deteriorated, then it's impossible to regrow it. But what we are starting to know now in modern science, nutritional medicine, is that it's not impossible to regrow these things. Even thyroid, even hypothyroidism, or even Hashimoto's, they thought, well, that once that thyroid was attacked, it was incurable. But we're starting to see remission and regrowth in over 20% of the cases. So the body is a miraculous thing. We just have to give it the right things, what it needs to heal itself. And what it needs to heal itself isn't more calories. It's these essential micronutrients. Modern science now knows that almost every single lifestyle diseases that most people are suffering from, whether it's diabetes or osteoporosis or cancer or high cholesterol or hypertension, and even obesity, and maybe most importantly obesity, stems from these deficiencies in micronutrients. Mira was just talking about the fact that the undernourished have the same micronutrient deficiencies as the overweight or obese. And when we go to these countries, and what's very sad for us is to travel to these countries and see how these people they look undernourished. They don't have enough calories, and they have all these horrible symptoms, and you can see that they're very skinny and their bodies are falling apart and they've had these diseases. But the problem is once they start to get these foods that their government subsidizes, these processed foods, oftentimes chips and sodas and candies, very cheap foods, those calories come in, but they stay deficient, right? Because those foods are micronutrient deficient as well, but they get the calories, they become the new overweight obese. That's why you're seeing
they miss healthy altogether. They go from one to the other almost in a very short period of time.
Within a year or so. This is why in India and in China, you're seeing an explosion of diabetes and obesity, and they never got to that sufficient healthy range. They didn't go from being underfed to sufficient healthy. They went right to overweight or obese. And we're all kind of missing this middle ground because we're missing the vital component, the one missing piece that science has been missing out on all along, and that's becoming micronutrient sufficient is the key to optimal health.
Yeah, and I think that's a common factor that you can look at throughout history as we've seen these problems start to increase, is our food quality has declined progressively throughout those years. And it makes perfect sense what you're saying. And I'm a big fan of saying we should not count calories, we should count chemicals and get rid of those. But also I feel like an important mental shift for people is to stop thinking of food as bad, because I think so many people, if you've ever had health issues, food is always the bad guy. And so it's like, what can I eat? And it's a fear thing. And to switch from that and from making our food choices based on fear to what food can I eat right now that's going to provide the most nutrients, that's going to provide the best source of all these vitamins, and choosing based on the positive and the abundant side of it rather than the fear of okay, what's not going to kill me? Yeah. And I think that micronutrients play a big role in that. Is obviously a salad with a good source of maybe grass-fed protein is going to have hugely more micronutrients than something with the same calories that's just a sandwich at a bakery, even if they look the same on the calorie level. So I think that's so key. And a question I get all the time from people is it even possible to get everything from food anymore with the way that our food supply has deteriorated? If someone is eating that, perfect diet, that elusive perfect diet, is it even possible to get it all from food?
There you go. There's that elusive perfect diet we always hear about. And we actually talk about this in the book because people always ask us that, obviously, talking about micronutrients, everyone's like, oh, yeah, you can get them all in a diet. You don't need to supplement. Everything is just in there. And so we actually started doing research. Jayson did a research paper in the JSSN in the Journal of
International Society of Sports Nutrition.
And it was just exactly on that topic because we wanted to see, is it even possible to? So we looked at 6 diet plans?
We did. We looked at 6 different diet plans. We wanted to look at the most popular diet plans, plans that were literally millions of people across the world were following. So we looked at Atkins. We looked at the DASH diet. We looked at the Best Life diet. That was Oprah's guy at that time. And we also looked at...
Primal Blueprint.
Primal Blueprint.
We looked at
Paleo.
Practical Paleo.
And we also looked at,
Best Diet.
The South Beach diet.
South Beach.
Yeah.
And what we did is we actually took their menu plan and we said, okay, if you were following this perfectly, like you were one of those perfect clients that took every single last grain of salt and put it into the recipes, would what they gave you to do create a state of sufficiency? Because of course it should. I mean, that's the goal, right? I mean, you can't survive without a state of sufficiency. And what we found is they were on average more than 50% deficient.
Yeah, I mean,
you would be literally 50% deficient in your micronutrients if you followed these programs.
Perfectly. And many of these plans were well over 2,000 calories a day because we didn't restrict the calories. And a lot of these plans aren't about losing weight, like the DASH diet or even Paleo and Primal. They're really about more health.
And they're about high quality foods too. They're about really high quality ancestral type diets. So we thought they would do better. But in reality, they all came through really, really deficient. And so like the American Medical Dietary Association, they actually put a call out to their people and they said, okay, we want you dietitians out there to tell us what the perfect diet is. It has to be 2,000 calories or less, and you can use any foods you want. And we even created this really cool database program where you can plug things in and play until it gets right. And what they found was that not one person was able to do it.
Not one.
Not one. So this whole myth of the balanced diet is that it's a myth. And one of the steps that we like to tell people to do is if you're going to go on a diet program, like paleo, primal, low carb, whatever you're going to follow, whatever your heart tells you is right for your body, then you need to know which ones they're most commonly deficient in. Because diets, by limiting what you can eat, also limit which micronutrients you're going to be able to receive from those foods. So it's really important to know that if you're following a paleo program, you're likely deficient in calcium. We have all the lists in the book for all the different types of, common diets that you follow. But that's a really good place to understand is that you're not going to get it through your food. And specifically, if you know what kind of diet plan on, you can actually look and see scientifically what you're likely deficient in.
Yeah. That's not to say that we aren't food first people.
Oh, yeah.
That's not to say that we aren't going to really encourage you to go out there and eat the most micronutrient dense food because that is what we believe.
That's step one.
But we don't want you to go out there and think that if I just make this one change in my life, all of a sudden all my problems are going to go away. If they do, great. But for 99.9% of the people out there, that's going to be a good first step. They then need to look at their lifestyle and find out how much toxins are in their overall lifestyle. How many, over-the-counter and prescription medications are they taking? How much stress do they have? Do they live in a polluted city? There's all kinds of factors that you then have to use a subtraction equation for. So we all talk about how many micronutrients do I eat, but then there's that subtraction. How many anti-nutrients were in your food? How stressed are you? Or what, like we said, all these different things, over-the-counter medications, exercise, even good things like that, deplete your micronutrients. You must do that part of the equation. And then you look at your overall sum. And if that sum then is equal to or greater than what you need to hit minimum micronutrient sufficiency level, you're all good.
Right.
If not, which you're probably not, then that's when supplementation comes in.
Yeah, and I love that you guys are so science-backed because you've always taken a step back and done the actual research I get a lot of heat for recommending certain supplements online. And unfortunately, it's sad, but we live in a world where the majority of us, even if we, like you said, do all the right things, it's not possible from food alone. I mean, potentially if we were living out in, a native environment, interacting with the soil, getting soil-borne organisms, tons of vitamin D, catching our own food, eating 90 different plant species in a given day, but none of us have the time, ability, or lifestyle to do that. And you guys mentioned other lifestyle factors and how they depleted. And I know that my listeners are pretty familiar with some of these. I talk about magnesium a lot and how if you are under stress or drink a lot of caffeine, your magnesium is depleted. But talk about some of the other ways that lifestyle can deplete your micronutrients.
Well, first of all, let's talk about stress alone. It's more than just the magnesium. I mean, there's 13 in our new stress guide that we're building. There's 13, and actually there's, I think there's really 24 total that affect stress, depression, and anxiety.
Yeah.
We're focusing on 13 because really iron, B6, they're finding out that most people who get anxiety attacks, those 2 micronutrients.
Yeah.
And these are such simple things when you start to look at the studies and you say, okay, but you know what, they're not coming out in the news, so most people don't know them, unfortunately, yet. But calcium, magnesium, stress eating. A lot of people blame themselves because when they get stressed out or anxious, they go grab food. Okay, your stress is being caused by magnesium and calcium deficiencies, and those are causing cravings. So you don't have to feel bad about this. It's a natural thing that's happening in your body as a result of you getting stressed out. Vitamin C, they've actually proven if you have enough vitamin C, even if that stress trigger hits you, you don't get stressed. You literally cannot raise your cortisol because the cortisol is going to fight with the vitamin C.
That was a really interesting study. Let me just hop in there and talk about that study because it was one that I brought to Mira, and I was like, we got to really look at this. Look what they did. So they just made you sufficient in vitamin C. Nothing fancy, just that one micronutrient. And they actually tried to stress people out. Like they would do things to them and they do lights and sounds and touch them and all that, and they just wouldn't get stressed. They just wouldn't, they couldn't get stressed. Literally, the body has natural defenses to handle stress, but when we're deficient in these essential micronutrients, the body doesn't have what it needs in order to fight that and combat that. So do we have more stress than our ancestors? That's debatable. We certainly have a lot more things out there stressing us, but I think running away from a tiger and living in a hut might have been very stressful too. But if they were sufficient in their micronutrients, they didn't feel that stress. We have a literal micronutrient deficiency pandemic across the country, and there's a million reasons as to why that's happening, but that's the reality. And if we don't become sufficient in those micronutrients, the stress that we're feeling, even though it may not be more than our ancestors, even if it's equal, we're going to it's going to feel much more to us, and it's really going to affect our mental wellness and affect our physical wellness. And that's really important to be able to turn that around.
So stress the B vitamins as well. And then looking at your medications, even over-the-counter medications. And a lot of times people give medications to children thinking, okay, the doctor told me to, and I understand that there's a time and a place for all these things. But at the same time, you might not necessarily think of what they're actually doing to their micronutrient levels. So for instance, like things you take for a cold or a flu, they actually deplete calcium, the zinc and the vitamin C, which are 2 of your big immune boosters. So you're taking this in order to feel better, but what they're actually doing is lowering your immune system. So it's actually making it, if it hadn't quite kicked in yet, it's really going to kick in and you're really going to get sick. So it's just little things like that. How much alcohol you have. I mean, too much alcohol, it ruins the lining of your gut so you can't absorb micronutrients. At the same time, what's really interesting is 2 glasses a day of red wine or alcohol actually improves health. And it's the studies on this across the board. Bone health. They've actually shown that if women are actually taking 2 glasses of alcohol a day, their bones will start rebuilding. And if they stop, it immediately stops. The building stops and it goes away. And then they can start again and they will actually start building their bone back. So we did a lot of research about these micronutrient depleters because there's not always a final answer like caffeine. It's not always bad. There's actually a lot of positive things as well. So even these things like exercise that deplete micronutrients, there is a level at which you should be doing these things, which actually increases your level. So we want to make sure that we always go towards that level. And we talk about exercise a lot in this book and the right way to do it so that you're not depleting massive amounts of micronutrients.
Yeah, it seems like there is kind of a natural tipping point where, a little bit is good, more is a little bit better, and then there's somewhere where you fall off and it becomes negative. And that's with anything in life, really. But I think a lot of people don't think about exercise as being a micronutrient depleter. They think if I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to exercise. But, when you lower the calories, which is typically one of the first things you do when you go on a diet, and you start to exercise more, remember that with calories also lowers those micronutrients. And exercise is going to not only burn more calories, but it's going to utilize your micronutrients more. So in all reality, it's kind of a perfect storm for micronutrient deficiency. Yeah. And a lot of times I think, in medical literature, we see kind of this rebound effect where people lose the weight, they start feeling great, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they start to crave food, and then they fall off and they gain even more weight. That kind of yo-yo effect, or that horrible circle that everybody has seen or certainly heard of, really comes from the fact that you're depleting your micronutrients. Those crave cycles start to come in with that calcium magnesium deficiency. We start to eat the food, and the body literally is physiologically screaming at you inside your head to eat more food. It wants you to eat more food because that's the only place it knows where micronutrients are. So it's trying to reverse this deficiency, but in all reality, all it's doing is sending us into this blizzard of eating bad foods, more depletion, and weight regain. And it's really just a horrible thing that can be easily stopped by just becoming micronutrient sufficient.
Yeah, and just one thing about kids, a lot of people think that kids, because they're small, don't need as many micronutrients, and that's a huge myth. Yeah. Their bodies are actually utilizing them so much faster because they're growing, those growth spurts, and they need the same levels. Basically, almost as of like age of 4 years old and above, it's the same amount of micronutrients. And now think about the portion of your food and the portion of their food.
Right.
How are they getting these magical micronutrients? Where are these coming from? So first of all, their food needs to be super duper dense. Like, you really have to make sure they're getting the best quality foods. But after that, they probably need to supplement as well, because they're probably not eating, enough of the micronutrients. Even the 2,000 calorie diets weren't doing enough of that.
Right.
Yeah. And I love that you guys bring that point home too, about like how the different ones tie into different diseases. And I feel like having that real food diet is kind of the safety net, because you need obviously all these things in balance. It wouldn't be healthy to just go overdose on magnesium or be like, okay, I think I need magnesium, so I'm just going to take a ton of magnesium. But obviously you need calcium with it. Or if you're taking vitamin C and iron, there's all these synergistic nutrients. So a real food diet is the safety net there to make sure you're getting all the micronutrients, but then also supplementing so that you're filling any gaps that you have. I think that's super important. And can we deviate? Mira, do you mind telling your story with your osteoporosis? Because I think that would really resonate with a lot of women. Is that all right?
No, that's fine. I mean, I have to say, something amazing happened this week. And we actually talked to one woman who, after seeing, I will do this because that it does change lives. A woman just contacted us, and she had seen me tell the story on a different show about a year ago. And she had advanced osteoporosis. And because of what she had heard, she started changing what she was doing and started supplementing and started working with us. And it's been a year now, and she's reversed her advanced osteoporosis as well. So absolutely, I'll share, because every single person can do this. It's not just me. I was living in New York in my 20s, and I thought I had the coolest life. Like, I was doing film premieres, and I was dressing celebrities, and I was on top of the world. And I was very stressed out, worked crazy hours, slept very strange times of day just to try to get a cat naps in. And I was definitely burning the candle at both ends. And I thought I had a great diet. In fact, I thought I was doing everything right, because I went to hip hop class twice a day. I was going to have that perfect body, hell or high water. I was also going to eat my spinach salad with fat-free dressing and only grilled chicken, and clean. And I had my fat-free muffin with coffee for breakfast because I couldn't get fat that way. And I had told myself everything was right. And I just started feeling miserable. My lower back hurt. I didn't have the energy I needed anymore. And the pain got so bad that I just literally started popping any pain pill I could find. And to the point where I was lying on my sofa, and rather than going to the premieres, I would send staff members, and I would just literally type on my computer like this on the sofa, because I couldn't even walk anymore. It was that painful. For my 30th birthday, I decided that it was time there. I couldn't do anything, that I had to go see a doctor. And when he came back in the room and he told me I had advanced osteoporosis, he had absolutely nothing positive to say to me. He was dumbfounded. To be 30 and to have the bone density of an 85-year-old woman was something that he had never seen, obviously. I went to specialist after specialist, and all they told me was, it's going to get worse. You're not going to walk. And you go.
Well, yeah. And really, the overall, her opportunity to rebuild her health as far as the medical world was concerned was almost zero. They did tell her that you should be taking a little bit more calcium. That was the one thing that they told her. And so she started to do research on calcium, and calcium led to magnesium, and that led to vitamin D. And so she was really looking for a way to be able to reverse this osteoporosis without using those drugs, because she wasn't sure that whether or not she wanted to have kids or not. And there's a lot of negative side effects associated with those medications, including not being able to have children, that she wasn't ready to take on at age 30. So luckily for me, and I usually don't get a chance to tell the story this way, so I'll tell it my way. Luckily for me, one day I walked into my office and here sits Mira, and she says to me, I am looking for somebody who knows about micronutrients. I am determined to reverse my incurable condition naturally. And are you willing to take something like this on? Yes or no? She's very A-type personality. And me, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. At this point, I'm working with clients mostly on weight loss. Yeah, there was that factor. But, at the end of the day, I want to make sure that I can really help this person. And, I had been focused on, as most nutritionists are, the macronutrients, the carbs, fats, and proteins. And I was thinking to myself, well, how is manipulating carbs, fats, and protein going to help her? What I need to do is start to focus on an area of nutrition that I've had some schooling in, but certainly never done a deep dive in. And most nutritionists are like this. Sometimes we talk about our doctors not knowing a lot about nutrition. There's a lot of nutritionists who don't know a lot about micronutrients. And that's, another side of it.
It's not the sexiest topic out there.
It really isn't. And I didn't know much about it. In fact, I went to medical literature to try to learn what I could about why it was her body wasn't able to absorb those essential minerals that she obviously needed in order to rebuild those bones. Why were her bones deteriorating so quickly? What was she doing? And that was what really led us into this world of micronutrients. And when we look back at what she was doing and the cravings she was having and the exercises and the food choices, it's obvious. You can always look back and see everything very clearly, but working from that point, I needed to find out why it was her body wasn't absorbing those micronutrients. You talked a little bit about how micronutrients can kind of compete with one another. This is a brand new, supplemental science is brand new. People watching right now may not know that the first vitamin was only discovered 100 years ago. We're still making micronutrients essential as like 1986.
McDonald's and robots both existed before multivitamins.
So did car radios.
So this is like completely new. So the good news is that by looking at these micronutrients, we went back to my doctor 2 years later and stood there and said, I don't even have osteoporosis. We took another DEXA scan, no osteoporosis, no osteopenia. And to this day, they still want me to get on medication because they think it's going to come back. But we're very happy to say that, like I said, people all across America now and in other countries have contacted us, and they're all reversing it. We're seeing it every single day. We're getting, other women coming forward. And it's such a pleasure to know that it's not just osteoporosis. Yes, it was my osteoporosis, but for somebody else, it's their high blood pressure. And for somebody else, it's their thyroid condition. And for somebody else, it's they have never been able to get pregnant. We just had this one woman now, she has 2 kids because she started working with us and she wasn't able to get pregnant with her lupus. And so it's really just been, we're doing this because we're passionate about it. And all these diseases really do come down to these deficiencies. And we're trying to scream it as loud as we can, and we actually put micronutrient on the cover of the new book, calling it the Micronutrient Miracle, because it's a word that we all really need to start spending a lot more time talking about.
Yeah. And just shifting that focus, like you say, away from just fat, protein, and carbs and into really what is actually in our food. I love that. And your story is so inspiring. I know. Back when I had osteo, and I'm like, what? Because you don't look like you ever, you're thriving and beautiful. So I thank you for telling your story.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate that. And to switch,
anyone out there, you can go to our website, hit contact us, and we love to help other people out there. So we actually answer all the emails.
There's actually an osteoporosis protocol in the new book, The Micronutrient Miracle. So if people are looking if they have osteoporosis, they're going to learn what we did and how we helped them. It's right in there.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to link to that as well, so people can find it easily. And to switch gears a little bit, another area that you guys have an expertise in that very, very few people do are traditional cultures around the world, because you guys are probably the most well-traveled people I've ever met. And you shared with me your experience with all these different traditional cultures and tribes that you visited. So can we spend a few minutes with you telling us a little bit about some of these cultures and maybe breaking some of the misconceptions about that they eat a certain way or they have a perfect diet? And what were some commonalities you found among healthy natural cultures?
Yeah. Well, we were always inspired by Western practice. We traveled around the world in the 1930s looking at the traditional peoples. And so when we were able to reverse Mira's advanced osteoporosis, we looked at each other and said, let's go out there and let's do a tradition of our own. We'll call it the project. We don't know how. We'll just start traveling around, living with remote tribes, start to understand and really look at their dietary lifestyle, try to understand what they were doing so right. Because we had read this medical literature that didn't have the diseases that we were suffering from in America and Europe and the world. And so yeah, we got to 125 different countries. The Carlton Project lasted, and did just that. Places like Papua New Guinea, to deep into the Amazon, both Ecuadorian, the Peruvian, and the Ecuadorian. So, and we went to areas in South America, Australia. What did we find? The further away from their traditional, you might imagine, disease rates start to increase. And so, when we got to these really remote areas, people who were as you might expect, they were fishing, they were farming. Their rivers were something really important to them. Their gardens or their planted. They knew like the back of their hand. Could a person become micronutrients off the land, living on food? Well, these people be able to do that because they're so full of micronutrients, minerals, and their water, their life is relatively stretched.
One misconception is that one thing that they're all doing right, they're all doing. In fact, that they're all doing. It's completely different in this tribe. And it's not saying one with low carb. Those cultures, they're living. All the ones that are low. It's not. They're not looking at dead in the micronutrients. I'm going to stop for some echo on your side too.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm trying to see what changed.
I don't know either. And that's something we might want. No one changed anything, so it's obviously on their end.
Yeah.
It just started this last just really threw me off.
Yeah. Do you want me to end meeting and call you back in and then
Yeah, do you guys want to try that?
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.